Picture this. You're sitting in a meeting that's running way too long. Your boss just dismissed your idea without even considering it. Your chest tightens. Your hands start to sweat. That familiar heat rises in your face, and before you know it, you've either snapped with a comment you'll regret later, or you've completely shut down, feeling small and powerless. Sound familiar? Or maybe it's that late-night spiral. You sent a text hours ago. No response. Your mind starts racing. Did I say something wrong? Are they ignoring me? Maybe they don't actually care about me. And suddenly, you're 3 hours deep into overthinking, your peace completely shattered by a simple, unanswered message. Here's the truth nobody talks about. Every single person on this planet struggles with emotional control. The world has become louder, more unpredictable, and more triggering than ever before. We're constantly bombarded with information, opinions, and situations designed to provoke a reaction. And most of us are walking around like emotional time bombs, just waiting for the next trigger to set us off. But here's what's fascinating. Some people seem untouchable. They navigate chaos with grace. They face criticism without crumbling. They handle conflict without losing their center. What do they know that you don't? I want you to imagine something for a moment. What would your life look like if nothing could shake your peace? What if you could walk into any room, face any challenge, deal with any difficult person, and maintain complete emotional control? What if your reactions were always your choice, never your impulse? This isn't about becoming emotionless or suppressing your feelings. This is about emotional mastery, the ability to feel deeply while responding wisely. It's about becoming unshakable not because you don't care, but because you care so much about your own peace that you refuse to let external chaos control your internal world. Over the next hour, you're going to learn the exact science, strategies, and inner work that separates emotionally reactive people from emotionally masterful ones. You'll discover why your brain betrays you in stressful moments, how to rewire your automatic responses, and most importantly, how to become the calm, confident person you've always wanted to be. Because here's what I know. The person who controls their emotions controls their life. And the person who controls their life shapes their destiny. You're about to become that person. Chapter 1: Why Emotional Mastery Changes Everything. Let me tell you about Sarah, a brilliant marketing executive who had everything going for her. Sharp mind, creative vision, incredible work ethic. But there was one problem that kept sabotaging her success. She couldn't control her reactions. In meetings, when someone challenged her ideas, she'd get defensive and argumentative. When her boss gave feedback, she'd take it personally and shut down. When projects didn't go as planned, she'd spiral into anxiety and blame. Her colleagues started walking on eggshells around her. Her boss began excluding her from important decisions. Her relationships at work deteriorated, and eventually, despite her talents, she was passed over for promotion after promotion. Sarah's story isn't unique. It's the story of millions of talented people whose careers, relationships, and happiness are held hostage by their inability to master their emotional responses. The cost of emotional reactivity is devastating. When you can't control your reactions, you lose credibility. People stop trusting your judgment because they never know which version of you they're going to get. You miss opportunities because others don't want to deal with your unpredictability. Your relationships suffer because people feel like they have to manage your emotions instead of being able to rely on your strength. But the internal cost is even worse. Every time you react instead of respond, you lose a piece of your self-respect. You know you're better than that outburst, that shutdown, that spiral of overthinking. The shame and regret compound over time, creating a cycle where your disappointment in yourself makes you even more reactive. Now let me tell you about Marcus, a negotiator who earns millions for his clients in high-stakes business deals. I watched him once in a room where everyone was yelling, accusations were flying, and $100 million deal was falling apart. While chaos erupted around him, Marcus sat calmly, his breathing steady, his voice measured. He didn't react to the emotions in the room. He acknowledged them and then redirected the conversation back to solutions. That single moment of emotional mastery saved the deal and earned his client $50 million more than they expected. But more than that, it demonstrated something profound. The person who stays calm in chaos becomes the natural leader that everyone looks to for guidance. Emotional mastery isn't just about avoiding negative outcomes. It's about unlocking positive ones that were previously impossible. When you're unshakable, people trust you with bigger responsibilities. They confide in you because they feel safe around your emotional stability. They follow you because your calm confidence inspires their own. In our hyper-connected, always-on world, emotional mastery has become a superpower. While everyone else is triggered, reactive, and emotionally exhausted, the person who has learned to stay centered becomes incredibly valuable. They become the eye of the storm, the calm, stable presence that others desperately crave. Think about the people you most respect and admire. I guarantee that emotional mastery is one of their defining characteristics. They might feel the same emotions you do, but they've learned to channel those emotions productively instead of being controlled by them. This is what's waiting for you on the other side of emotional mastery: respect, influence, peace of mind, and the deep satisfaction that comes from knowing you can handle whatever life throws at you. You're about to learn exactly how to get there. Chapter 2: The Science of Your Emotions. Your emotions don't just happen to you randomly. They follow a predictable, scientific process that you can understand and influence. Every emotional reaction you've ever had follows the same basic pattern: stimulus, thought, feeling, response. Here's how it works. Something happens in your environment. Someone cuts you off in traffic, your boss criticizes your work, or you see an ex-partner with someone new. That's the stimulus. But the stimulus doesn't directly cause your emotional response. There's a crucial step in between: your interpretation. Your brain instantly evaluates the stimulus and creates a thought about what it means. That driver disrespected me. My boss thinks I'm incompetent. I'm replaceable and unloved. This thought then triggers the feeling: anger, shame, jealousy, which drives your response. This is revolutionary because it means your emotions aren't caused by what happens to you. They're caused by what you think about what happens to you. And thoughts can be changed. Inside your brain, there's an ancient battle happening every time you face a challenging situation. In the deeper, more primitive part of your brain sits the amygdala, your emotional alarm system. It's constantly scanning for threats, and when it detects one, it floods your system with stress hormones and prepares you to fight, flee, or freeze. This system kept your ancestors alive when they faced physical dangers like predators. But your amygdala can't distinguish between a charging lion and a harsh email from your boss. It treats both as threats and triggers the same physiological response: elevated heart rate, shallow breathing, tunnel vision, and impaired rational thinking. Meanwhile, in your prefrontal cortex, the more evolved part of your brain, sits your capacity for logical thinking, planning, and emotional regulation. This is where wisdom lives, where you can consider multiple perspectives and choose your response thoughtfully. The problem is that the amygdala is faster. It can trigger an emotional response in milliseconds, while the prefrontal cortex takes a few seconds to come online. This is why you often find yourself saying or doing things you regret before you even realize what's happening. But here's the incredible news. Your brain has something called neuroplasticity. This means you can literally rewire your neural pathways through practice and repetition. Every time you pause and choose a thoughtful response instead of an automatic reaction, you strengthen the neural pathways that support emotional mastery. The difference between emotionally reactive people and emotionally masterful people isn't that they feel different emotions. They've simply trained their prefrontal cortex to override their amygdala more quickly and consistently. Consider two people receiving the same piece of criticism at work. Person A's amygdala interprets it as an attack on their competence and worth. They think, "This is so unfair. They're trying to make me look bad." They feel angry and defensive and respond by arguing or shutting down. Person B's prefrontal cortex quickly comes online and reframes the situation. They think, "This is feedback that could help me improve." They're investing time in my development. They feel curious and motivated and respond by asking clarifying questions and thanking the person for their input. Same stimulus, completely different thoughts, feelings, and responses. And the beautiful thing is that person B's interpretation usually leads to better outcomes, which reinforces their positive thinking patterns and makes them even more resilient over time. Understanding this process is the first step toward emotional mastery. Your emotions are not mysterious forces beyond your control. They're predictable responses to the thoughts you think and the meanings you assign to events. And that means you have far more power over your emotional experience than you ever imagined. Chapter 3: Triggers: Finding Your Emotional Hot Buttons. Every person has specific triggers, those particular situations, words, or behaviors that instantly hijack their emotional state. Understanding your triggers is like having a map of your emotional landmines. Once you know where they are, you can navigate around them or defuse them before they explode. Your triggers aren't random. They're deeply connected to your personal history, your unmet psychological needs, and your deepest fears. Most triggers fall into a few common categories: disrespect, abandonment, loss of control, and uncertainty. Let me tell you about David, a successful entrepreneur who couldn't understand why he kept sabotaging business relationships. Every time a partner or client would question his decisions or suggest changes, he would become hostile and defensive. He'd interpret any pushback as a personal attack and would often end profitable relationships over minor disagreements. Through self-reflection, David realized his trigger was being challenged or corrected in any way. This traced back to a childhood where his father was hypercritical and never validated his ideas. As an adult, any suggestion that his thinking might be flawed felt like that same childhood wound being reopened. His unconscious mind was still trying to protect the hurt little boy who never felt good enough. Once David understood this pattern, everything changed. When someone questioned his ideas, instead of immediately feeling attacked, he could pause and remind himself, "This isn't my father criticizing me. This is a business partner trying to make our project better." The same stimulus, but completely different meaning and response. Your triggers work the same way. That person who always interrupts you might be triggering your deep need to be heard and valued. The friend who cancels plans might be activating your fear of abandonment. The boss who micromanages might be hitting your need for autonomy and trust. Here's a powerful exercise. For the next week, keep a trigger journal. Every time you have a strong emotional reaction, write down what happened, what you felt, and what deeper need or fear might have been activated. Look for patterns. Maybe you notice that you always get angry when people are late because it makes you feel disrespected. Or you realize that you spiral into anxiety whenever plans change because uncertainty makes you feel unsafe. Or you discover that you shut down whenever someone raises their voice because conflict reminds you of scary moments from your childhood. Once you identify your triggers, you can start to prepare for them. You can develop specific strategies for each one. You can practice reframing the situations that typically set you off. Most importantly, you can start to heal the underlying wounds that make you vulnerable to these triggers in the first place. Understanding your triggers also helps you develop compassion for others when they're triggered. That colleague who always seems defensive might be carrying wounds around being criticized. That friend who gets clingy in relationships might have deep abandonment fears. When you understand the human psychology behind difficult behavior, it becomes easier to respond with empathy instead of reaction. Remember, having triggers doesn't make you weak or damaged. It makes you human. Everyone has them. The difference between emotionally reactive people and emotionally masterful people is that masterful people know what their triggers are and have developed strategies for managing them. Your triggers are actually gifts in disguise. They show you exactly where your growth opportunities lie. Every trigger is pointing to a part of your psyche that needs healing, understanding, or strengthening. When you do that inner work, you don't just become less reactive. You become more whole, more confident, and more compassionate. The goal isn't to eliminate your triggers completely. The goal is to recognize them quickly, understand what they're telling you about your deeper needs, and choose your response consciously instead of being hijacked by unconscious patterns from your past. Chapter 4: The Pause, Your Greatest Weapon. Between every stimulus and response, there's a space. In that space lies your freedom to choose. Most people never access this space because they react so automatically. But learning to pause is the single most powerful skill you can develop for emotional mastery. The pause works because it gives your prefrontal cortex time to come online before your amygdala completely takes over. It's the difference between being a victim of your emotions and being the master of them. Here's what happens in your body when you're triggered. Your heart rate spikes, your breathing becomes shallow, stress hormones flood your system, and your thinking becomes narrow and reactive. The pause interrupts this cascade and activates your body's relaxation response. The most immediate way to create a pause is through breathing. When you're emotionally activated, your breath becomes fast and shallow, which actually intensifies your emotional state. But when you consciously slow and deepen your breathing, you send a signal to your nervous system that you're safe, and your body begins to calm down. Try this right now. Breathe in for 4 counts, hold for 4 counts, breathe out for 4 counts, hold for 4 counts. This is called box breathing, and it's used by Navy SEALs, emergency responders, and elite athletes to maintain calm under extreme pressure. Just 2 minutes of box breathing can completely shift your physiological state. Another powerful technique is called name it to tame it. When you're feeling a strong emotion, simply naming it reduces its intensity. Say to yourself, "I'm feeling angry right now," or "I notice anxiety rising in my chest." This simple act of labeling activates your prefrontal cortex and creates distance between you and the emotion. You're no longer lost in the feeling, you're observing it. Visualization can also create instant pauses. Imagine a stop sign in your mind, or picture yourself taking a step back from the situation. Some people visualize turning down the volume on their emotions or changing the channel in their mind. Find an image that works for you and practice using it. In heated moments, you can buy yourself time with phrases like, "Let me think about that for a moment," "That's interesting, tell me more," or "I want to give you a thoughtful response." These phrases pause the interaction and prevent you from saying something you'll regret. Think of emotional mastery like learning to drive in a storm. New drivers tend to overreact to every gust of wind or patch of ice, jerking the steering wheel back and forth and often making the situation worse. Experienced drivers have learned to make small, measured adjustments. They don't fight the storm, they navigate through it with steady hands. The pause is your steady hand on the steering wheel of your emotional life. It's the moment where you can ask yourself, "How do I want to respond to this? What response would I be proud of later? What would the person I'm becoming do in this situation?" Sarah, the marketing executive I mentioned earlier, transformed her career once she learned to pause. When her boss gave her feedback, instead of immediately getting defensive, she started saying, "Thank you for that input. Let me process this and get back to you with my thoughts. This simple pause allowed her to receive feedback objectively, respond professionally, and ultimately build stronger relationships with her colleagues. The pause doesn't have to be long to be effective. Even a 3-second pause can make the difference between a reaction and a response. Even a single conscious breath can shift your entire emotional state. Practice the pause when the stakes are low so it's available when the stakes are high. Pause before responding to texts when you're annoyed. Pause before honking your horn in traffic. Pause before snapping at family members. These small moments of practice build the neural pathways that will serve you in bigger challenges. Remember, you always have access to this space between stimulus and response. No matter how intense the situation, no matter how triggered you feel, you can always choose to pause. And in that pause lies your power to respond from your highest self rather than your wounded ego. Chapter 5: Reframing. Changing the story you tell yourself. Your perception creates your reality, and your reality determines your emotional experience. Two people can experience the exact same event and have completely different emotional responses based on the meaning they assign to what happened. Learning to reframe situations is like learning to be the editor of your own life story. Cognitive reframing is based on a simple but profound truth. It's not what happens to you that determines your emotional state. It's what you tell yourself about what happens to you. Every situation is neutral until you assign it meaning, and you have the power to choose meanings that serve you rather than sabotage you. The key is learning to shift from threat-based thinking to challenge-based thinking. When your brain interprets a situation as a threat, it triggers fear, anxiety, and defensive reactions. When it interprets the same situation as a challenge, it triggers focus, excitement, and problem-solving responses. Consider these reframe examples. Instead of "they disrespected me," try "they're speaking from their own fear or insecurity." Instead of "I failed," try "I learned what doesn't work and I'm one step closer to what does." Instead of "this is unfair," try "this is teaching me something I need to learn." Let me tell you about Maya, an Olympic hopeful who experienced one of the most devastating moments of her athletic career. After training for 4 years, she fell during her qualifying routine and lost her chance to compete in the Olympics. For weeks, she was consumed by shame, regret, and self-doubt. But then Maya made a choice that changed everything. She reframed her failure as redirection. Maybe this happened because I need to develop mental toughness, not just physical skill, she told herself. Maybe this setback is preparing me for a bigger comeback. She spent the next 4 years not only improving her physical performance, but developing unprecedented mental resilience. When she finally made it to the Olympics 4 years later, she credited her earlier failure as the most important thing that ever happened to her athletic career. The same event that could have ended her dreams became the foundation for achieving them. Here's how to practice reframing. When you notice yourself getting emotionally activated, pause and ask yourself, what other ways could I look at this situation? What would someone I admire think about this? How might this situation be serving my growth, even if I can't see it right now? Sometimes the most powerful reframes come from zooming out temporally. Ask yourself, will this matter in 10 years? Will this matter in 10 months? Will this matter in 10 days? Most of the things that trigger intense emotions in the moment become insignificant when viewed from a broader perspective. You can also reframe by zooming out spatially. In the context of my entire life, how significant is this really? In the context of all the challenges people face in the world, how does this compare? Another powerful reframing technique is to look for the hidden gift in difficult situations. What is this situation teaching me? How is this making me stronger? What skills or insights am I developing that I wouldn't have gained otherwise? The goal isn't to become delusionally positive or to dismiss legitimate concerns. The goal is to choose interpretations that empower you rather than victimize you, that open possibilities rather than close them, that connect you to your strength rather than your wounds. Reframing becomes easier with practice. Start small. When you're stuck in traffic, instead of thinking, "This is ruining my day," try, "This gives me extra time to listen to music and decompress." When a project at work gets delayed, instead of thinking, "Nothing ever goes right," try, "This gives me more time to perfect the details." The stories you tell yourself about your experiences literally reshape your brain over time. When you consistently choose empowering interpretations, you develop neural pathways that automatically look for opportunity, growth, and possibility in every situation. You become someone who sees challenges as adventures rather than threats. Remember, you're always telling yourself a story about what's happening in your life. The question is, are you telling yourself a story that makes you stronger or weaker? Are you the hero of your story, or are you the victim? The choice is always yours. Chapter 6: Building Your Emotional Vocabulary. Most people are emotionally illiterate. They experience rich, complex inner worlds, but only have a handful of words to describe what they're feeling. They say they're angry when they might actually be disappointed, frustrated, betrayed, or scared. This emotional imprecision keeps them stuck in reactive patterns because you can't manage what you can't accurately identify. Building your emotional vocabulary is like upgrading from a black and white TV to high-definition color. Suddenly, you can see nuances and distinctions that were invisible before. And here's the remarkable thing. Simply naming your emotions with precision automatically reduces their intensity and gives you more choices in how to respond. Consider the difference between saying, "I'm angry," and "I'm feeling overlooked and undervalued." The first description leaves you stuck in a reactive state. The second gives you insight into what you actually need, recognition and appreciation, and points toward constructive solutions. The emotion wheel, developed by psychologist Robert Plutchik, identifies 8 primary emotions: anger, fear, sadness, disgust, surprise, anticipation, trust, and joy, and shows how they combine and vary in intensity to create more complex feelings. For example, anger plus disgust creates contempt. Fear plus surprise creates alarm. Joy plus trust creates love. But even within primary emotions, there are countless variations. Anger might actually be annoyance, frustration, rage, irritation, indignation, or fury. Each of these words points to different underlying causes and suggests different responses. When you're feeling what you might generically call sad, pause and get more specific. Are you disappointed, lonely, grieving, melancholy, defeated? Each of these emotions gives you different information about what you need and how to move forward. Fear has many faces: worry, anxiety, dread, panic, nervousness, apprehension, terror, or unease. When you can distinguish between feeling mildly worried and deeply anxious, you can match your response to the actual intensity of the situation rather than over or underreacting. Here's a practical exercise. For 1 week, set 3 reminders on your phone throughout the day. When the reminder goes off, pause and identify exactly what you're feeling using specific emotional language. Don't settle for good, bad, fine, or stressed. Push yourself to find precise words. Keep an emotion journal where you write down not just what happened, but the specific emotions you experienced and their intensity on a scale of 1 to 10. Over time, you'll start to see patterns in your emotional landscape that were previously invisible. This precision serves you in relationships too. Instead of saying, "You made me angry," you might say, "I felt dismissed when you interrupted me." The first statement is accusatory and likely to trigger defensiveness. The second is descriptive and opens the door for understanding and resolution. When others are emotional, help them develop precision too. Instead of accepting "I'm fine" or "I'm upset," gently probe with questions like, what does upset feel like right now? Is it more disappointment, frustration, or something else? The more precisely you can identify your emotions, the more precisely you can address their underlying causes. If you're feeling stressed, that's too vague to be actionable. But if you're feeling overwhelmed by too many commitments, or anxious about an upcoming presentation, or frustrated by a lack of resources, now you have specific problems you can solve. Emotional precision also prevents you from being hijacked by emotions that aren't actually appropriate to the situation. Sometimes what feels like anger is actually hurt. Sometimes what feels like sadness is actually fear. When you can accurately identify what you're feeling, you can respond to the real emotion rather than the surface one. Building emotional vocabulary is an ongoing practice. Read poetry, literature, and articles about psychology. Notice how skilled writers describe emotional experiences. Collect words that resonate with your inner experience. The richer your emotional vocabulary becomes, the richer your self-awareness becomes, and the more skillfully you can navigate your inner world. Remember, emotions are information. They're your internal guidance system telling you about your needs, values, and reactions to your environment. But if you can't read the information accurately, you can't use it wisely. Emotional vocabulary is your translation tool, turning mysterious feelings into actionable insights. Chapter 7. The Role of Emotional Intelligence. IQ might get you hired, but EQ gets you promoted. In study after study, emotional intelligence proves to be a stronger predictor of success in leadership, relationships, and life satisfaction than cognitive intelligence. Yet most people have never been taught the skills that make up emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence consists of 4 core competencies, and mastering them will transform every area of your life. The first is self-awareness, the ability to recognize and understand your emotions as they arise. This isn't just knowing that you're angry. It's understanding why you're angry, how that anger is affecting your thinking and behavior, and what it's telling you about your needs and values. Self-aware people notice the early warning signs of emotional activation. They feel their heart rate increasing, their muscles tensing, or their breathing shifting before their emotions fully take over. This early detection system gives them more choices in how to respond. The second competency is self-regulation, the ability to manage your emotions productively rather than being controlled by them. This doesn't mean suppressing emotions or pretending not to feel them. It means experiencing emotions fully while choosing your response wisely. Self-regulation includes skills like pausing before reacting, reframing situations to see them more objectively, and using techniques like breathing and visualization to maintain emotional balance. People with strong self-regulation don't have fewer challenging emotions. They just don't let those emotions drive their decisions. The third competency is empathy, the ability to recognize and understand emotions in others. Empathy allows you to read the emotional subtext of interactions, understand what people need even when they can't articulate it, and respond in ways that make others feel seen and understood. Empathy isn't just about being nice, it's about being effective. When you can accurately read the emotional state of others, you can adapt your communication style, timing, and approach to be most influential and helpful. The fourth competency is social skills, the ability to manage relationships and navigate social situations effectively. This includes communication, conflict resolution, leadership, and the ability to inspire and influence others. Let me tell you about Jennifer, who transformed a toxic workplace culture through emotional intelligence. When she became a manager, her team was plagued by gossip, backstabbing, and low morale. Instead of issuing mandates or punishing bad behavior, Jennifer focused on modeling and teaching emotional intelligence. She started by increasing her own self-awareness, noticing when she felt triggered by team conflicts, and practicing self-regulation instead of reacting defensively. She developed empathy by really listening to each team member's concerns and understanding the emotions behind their behaviors. Then she used her social skills to address the underlying emotional dynamics. She created psychological safety by acknowledging everyone's feelings without judgment. She taught the team to express their needs directly instead of through passive-aggressive behavior. She helped them reframe conflicts as opportunities for growth rather than personal attacks. Within 6 months, the team's productivity increased by 40%, turnover dropped to nearly zero, and their department became known throughout the company for its positive culture. Jennifer's success came not from technical skills or business acumen, but from her ability to understand and work with human emotions effectively. Emotional intelligence is particularly crucial in our digital age, where so much communication happens through screens without the benefit of vocal tone, facial expressions, and body language. When you can't see someone's face or hear their voice, you must rely even more heavily on emotional intelligence to read between the lines and communicate effectively. The beautiful thing about emotional intelligence is that it's entirely learnable. Unlike IQ, which is relatively fixed, you can continue developing your EQ throughout your entire life. Every interaction is an opportunity to practice self-awareness, self-regulation, empathy, and social skills. Start by paying closer attention to your own emotional patterns. Notice what triggers you, how emotions show up in your body, and what you do when you're emotionally activated. Then expand your awareness to others. Practice reading facial expressions, vocal tones, and body language. Ask people about their emotional experiences and really listen to their answers. The investment in developing emotional intelligence pays dividends in every relationship and every area of your life. It makes you a better leader, partner, parent, and friend. Most importantly, it makes you someone that others want to be around, someone who brings calm, understanding, and wisdom to every interaction. Chapter 8: Staying Calm in High-Pressure Situations. High-pressure situations are like emotional stress tests. They reveal your true level of emotional mastery and give you opportunities to practice your skills when they matter most. Whether it's a job interview, a difficult conversation, a medical emergency, or a public presentation, your ability to stay calm under pressure will determine your effectiveness. The first key to staying calm in high-pressure situations is understanding what happens to your body when stress hormones are released. Your heart rate increases, your breathing becomes shallow, your muscles tense, and your cognitive function becomes impaired. You literally can't think as clearly when you're in a high-stress state. But you can train your body to maintain physiological calm even in challenging circumstances. Emergency responders, elite athletes, and military personnel all use specific techniques to stay centered when lives are on the line. Controlled breathing is your most powerful tool. When you're under pressure, your breathing automatically becomes fast and shallow, which signals danger to your nervous system and intensifies your stress response. But when you consciously slow and deepen your breathing, you activate your parasympathetic nervous system and trigger your body's relaxation response. Practice this technique. Breathe in slowly through your nose for 6 counts. Hold for 2 counts. Then exhale slowly through your mouth for 8 counts. The longer exhale is key. It tells your nervous system that you're safe and helps you return to a calm state. Grounding exercises help you stay present instead of getting lost in anxious thoughts about what might happen. Try the 5-4-3-2-1 technique. Identify 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste. This brings your attention back to the present moment and out of spiraling thoughts. Your posture also affects your emotional state. When you're stressed, you naturally hunch forward, close your chest and make yourself smaller. But research shows that opening your posture, standing tall, pulling your shoulders back, and taking up space actually changes your hormone levels and makes you feel more confident and calm. Mentally, high-pressure situations become more manageable when you shift your focus from outcome to process. Instead of worrying about whether you'll succeed or fail, focus on executing the steps you've prepared. Trust your training and let your preparation carry you forward. Premortem thinking is another powerful mental technique. Before entering a high-pressure situation, imagine everything that could go wrong and develop a plan for handling each scenario. This isn't pessimism, it's preparation. When you've already thought through potential challenges, you'll feel more confident and react more calmly if they actually occur. Expectation management is crucial. Often, we create additional pressure for ourselves by expecting perfection or assuming that one moment will determine our entire future. Remind yourself that most situations are less consequential than they feel in the moment, and that you can handle whatever happens. Let me share the mental script that a trauma surgeon uses to stay calm during life or death operations. I am exactly where I need to be, doing exactly what I'm trained to do. I have all the skills and knowledge necessary for this moment. Whatever happens, I will respond appropriately. I trust my training, my team, and my ability to handle whatever arises. Detachment from outcome is perhaps the most advanced skill. This doesn't mean not caring about results. It means caring more about your effort and process than about things outside your control. When you can give your best effort while remaining unattached to specific outcomes, you free yourself from the anxiety that comes from trying to control uncontrollable variables. Practice these techniques regularly in low-pressure situations so they're available when you need them most. Use controlled breathing during your commute, practice grounding exercises during routine activities, and work on posture awareness throughout your day. Remember, staying calm under pressure isn't about feeling no stress. It's about performing effectively despite stress. It's about maintaining access to your highest capabilities when the stakes are highest. And like any skill, it improves dramatically with consistent practice. Chapter 9. Dealing with difficult people without losing yourself. Difficult people are everywhere, and they're often the greatest test of your emotional mastery. They can trigger you, drain your energy, and push you to react in ways that compromise your values and goals. But learning to deal with difficult people skillfully is one of the most valuable life skills you can develop. The first step is understanding that difficult behavior is usually a symptom of unmet psychological needs or unresolved emotional wounds. The person who's always aggressive might be desperately trying to feel powerful because they feel powerless inside. The chronic complainer might be seeking attention because they feel invisible. The know-it-all might be covering up deep insecurity about their worth. This doesn't excuse their behavior, but understanding the psychology behind it helps you respond more strategically and with less emotional reactivity. Let's look at 4 common types of difficult people and specific strategies for each. The aggressor uses intimidation, criticism, and hostility to dominate others. With aggressors, the key is to remain calm and not take their behavior personally. Stand your ground without matching their energy. Use phrases like, "I can see you feel strongly about this. Help me understand your main concern." This acknowledges their emotion without accepting their aggressive delivery. The victim constantly complains, makes excuses, and blames others for their problems while refusing to take responsibility for solutions. With victims, set clear boundaries about how much complaining you're willing to listen to. Ask solution-focused questions. What do you think would help in this situation? Or what's one small step you could take to improve this? The manipulator uses guilt, emotional blackmail, and passive-aggressive tactics to get their way. With manipulators, trust your instincts when something feels off. Don't get drawn into their emotional drama. Stick to facts and refuse to be responsible for managing their emotions. Say things like, "I understand you're disappointed, but this is my decision." The know-it-all dismisses others' ideas and constantly needs to prove they're the smartest person in the room. With know-it-alls, acknowledge their expertise when appropriate, but don't feel compelled to argue or prove them wrong. Use phrases like, "That's an interesting perspective. I see it differently because." This validates their need to feel smart while maintaining your own position. Regardless of the type of difficult person you're dealing with, certain universal principles apply. First, maintain your boundaries. Decide in advance what behavior you will and won't tolerate, and stick to those limits consistently. Don't make exceptions because you feel sorry for someone or want to avoid conflict. Second, refuse to engage in emotional volleyball. When someone throws emotional drama at you, don't catch it and throw it back. Let it drop. You can acknowledge their feelings without taking them on as your responsibility. "I can see you're upset about this." Third, use the broken record technique when necessary. If someone keeps pushing after you've said no, simply repeat your position calmly without getting drawn into lengthy explanations or justifications. "As I mentioned, I won't be able to help with that." Fourth, document interactions with chronically difficult people, especially in professional settings. Keep records of what was said and when, particularly if their behavior affects your work or well-being. Remember, you cannot change difficult people, but you can change how you respond to them. Your goal isn't to fix them or make them like you. It's to protect your own emotional well-being while maintaining your integrity and achieving your objectives. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for a difficult person is to stop enabling their behavior by setting clear boundaries. When you refuse to be their emotional dumping ground or the target of their dysfunction, you force them to find healthier ways of getting their needs met. The key to dealing with difficult people without losing yourself is to stay connected to your own values and goals. Ask yourself, what kind of person do I want to be in this interaction? How can I respond in a way that I'll be proud of later? This keeps you focused on what you can control, your own character and choices, rather than getting lost in trying to control their behavior. Chapter 10: Mastering Self-Talk. The conversation you have with yourself is the most important conversation of your life. Your internal dialogue shapes your emotions, influences your decisions, and ultimately determines your destiny. Yet most people pay no attention to the constant stream of thoughts running through their minds, allowing negative, destructive patterns to sabotage their peace and potential. Your inner voice can be your greatest ally or your worst enemy. It can coach you through challenges or criticize you into paralysis. It can remind you of your strengths or obsess over your weaknesses. The choice is yours, but first you must become aware of what you're currently saying to yourself. Most people have two primary inner voices, the coach voice and the critic voice. The coach voice is supportive, encouraging, and solution-focused. It says things like, "You've handled difficult situations before and you can handle this one too." Or, "This is challenging, but it's also an opportunity to grow." The critic voice is harsh, discouraging, and problem-focused. It says things like, "You always mess things up," or "Everyone thinks you're incompetent," or "You'll never be good enough." The critic voice often sounds like internalized versions of critical parents, teachers, or peers from your past. It feels familiar because you've been hearing it for years, but familiarity doesn't make it helpful or accurate. Here's what's crucial to understand. Both voices are you, but only one serves your highest good. You have the power to turn down the volume on the critic voice and amplify the coach voice. The first step is developing awareness of your self-talk patterns. Most internal dialogue happens so automatically that you don't even notice it. Start paying attention to the thoughts that arise when you face challenges, make mistakes, or feel uncertain. Are you speaking to yourself like a supportive friend or a harsh enemy? When you catch yourself engaging in negative self-talk, pause and ask, would I speak to someone I love this way? If my best friend were in this situation, what would I say to them? Usually, you're much kinder and more encouraging to others than you are to yourself. Practice rewriting your internal scripts. Instead of, I'm so stupid for making that mistake, try, everyone makes mistakes, and this one taught me something valuable. Instead of, I can't handle this, try, this is challenging, but I have the resources and resilience to figure it out. The goal isn't to become delusionally positive or to ignore real problems. The goal is to speak to yourself with the same compassion, encouragement, and realistic optimism that you would offer to someone you care about. Your self-talk becomes particularly important during difficult times. When you're facing setbacks, criticism, or uncertainty, your inner voice will either help you navigate the challenge or make it worse. Practice developing a repertoire of supportive phrases that you can use when life gets tough. Try phrases like, this too shall pass. I am stronger than this challenge. Every setback is a setup for a comeback. I don't have to be perfect. I just have to keep growing. Or, I trust my ability to handle whatever comes my way. Notice how different self-talk affects your emotional state and energy levels. When you speak to yourself harshly, you probably feel depleted, anxious, or depressed. When you speak to yourself supportively, you likely feel more energized, confident, and resilient. Your self-talk also affects your behavior and results. If you constantly tell yourself you're not good enough, you'll unconsciously sabotage opportunities to prove yourself wrong. If you tell yourself you're capable of growth and success, you'll take actions that align with that belief. Self-compassion is a crucial component of healthy self-talk. This means treating yourself with kindness when you struggle, remembering that difficulty and imperfection are part of the human experience, and maintaining perspective during challenging times instead of getting lost in self-criticism. Research shows that self-compassionate people are actually more motivated to improve and less likely to give up after setbacks than people who are self-critical. Kindness toward yourself isn't weakness, it's wisdom. Create specific mantras or affirmations that resonate with you and practice them regularly. This might sound simplistic, but repetitive positive self-talk literally rewires your brain over time, making optimistic and supportive thoughts more automatic. Remember, you're going to be talking to yourself for the rest of your life. Make sure it's a conversation that uplifts, motivates, and supports you rather than one that tears you down. The quality of your life depends largely on the quality of your self-talk. Chapter 11: Emotional Resilience. Bouncing back faster. Resilience isn't about avoiding difficulty. It's about recovering from it quickly and growing stronger in the process. Emotionally resilient people don't experience fewer setbacks than others. They just bounce back faster and learn more from their challenges. There's an important distinction between resilience and endurance. Endurance is about gritting your teeth and pushing through difficulty. Resilience is about adapting, learning, and finding new ways to thrive despite obstacles. Endurance depletes you over time. Resilience renews you. Emotional resilience operates on 3 levels: recovery, adaptation, and growth. Recovery is returning to your baseline emotional state after a setback. Adaptation is adjusting your strategies and expectations based on new information. Growth is becoming stronger, wiser, and more capable as a result of facing challenges. Let me tell you about Roberto, an entrepreneur whose story illustrates all 3 levels of resilience. After 10 years of building his company, Roberto lost everything in the 2008 financial crisis. His business failed, his savings were wiped out, and he had to move back in with his parents at age 35. For the first few months, Roberto was devastated. He experienced grief, shame, and self-doubt. But instead of staying stuck in those emotions, he focused on recovery. He used the emotional regulation techniques you've been learning: breathing, reframing, and self-compassion to process his feelings without being overwhelmed by them. Once he recovered his emotional equilibrium, Roberto moved to adaptation. He analyzed what had happened objectively, identified what he could have done differently, and adjusted his approach based on what he learned. He realized he had been over-leveraged and too dependent on a single revenue stream. Finally, Roberto embraced growth. He used this setback as an opportunity to develop skills he'd never needed before: humility, resourcefulness, and emotional resilience. He started his next company with better systems, more conservative financial management, and deeper wisdom about handling uncertainty. That second company became more successful than his first, and Roberto credits his failure as the most important learning experience of his entrepreneurial journey. The same event that could have ended his career became the foundation for greater success. The key to building emotional resilience is developing what psychologists call a growth mindset. Instead of seeing challenges as threats to your identity or proof of your limitations, you see them as opportunities to develop new capabilities and deepen your understanding. Resilient people ask different questions when facing setbacks. Instead of "why is this happening to me?" they ask, "what can I learn from this?" Instead of "this proves I'm not good enough," they think, "this shows me where I need to grow." Instead of "I'll never recover from this," they believe, "this is temporary, and I will be stronger on the other side." Building resilience also requires developing multiple sources of identity, meaning, and self-worth. When your entire sense of self depends on one role, relationship, or achievement, you become fragile. But when you have diverse sources of identity, as a parent, friend, learner, creator, contributor, setbacks in one area don't destroy your entire sense of self. Resilient people also maintain connections with others during difficult times instead of isolating themselves. They share their struggles with trusted friends, seek support when needed, and remember that asking for help is a sign of strength, not weakness. Practice building resilience during smaller challenges so the skill is available during bigger ones. When you experience minor setbacks, a rejected proposal, a social misunderstanding, a small financial loss, use them as opportunities to practice recovery, adaptation, and growth. Develop a personal resilience toolkit, specific techniques that help you bounce back from setbacks. This might include physical practices like exercise or meditation, mental practices like journaling or reframing, social practices like calling a supportive friend, or spiritual practices like prayer or reflection. Remember, resilience is like a muscle. It gets stronger with use. Every time you face a challenge and recover from it, you're building your capacity to handle future difficulties with greater ease and wisdom. The goal isn't to become immune to difficulty. That's impossible and would actually limit your growth. The goal is to become someone who can face any challenge with confidence, knowing that you have the inner resources to not just survive, but thrive, no matter what life brings your way. Chapter 12: Living the Calm Life. Emotional Mastery and Daily Practice. Emotional mastery isn't something you achieve once and then forget about. It's a way of living that requires daily practice and intentional choices. The goal is to integrate these skills so seamlessly into your life that emotional regulation becomes as automatic as breathing. Your daily rituals set the tone for your emotional state throughout the day. How you start your morning influences how you respond to challenges, interact with others, and handle stress for the next 16 hours. Emotionally masterful people design morning routines that center them and connect them to their values before the chaos of the day begins. Consider starting your day with 10 minutes of meditation or mindfulness practice. This doesn't require any special equipment or training. Simply sitting quietly and focusing on your breath creates space between you and your thoughts, strengthening your ability to observe your emotions rather than being controlled by them. Journaling is another powerful daily practice. Spend 5 minutes each morning writing about your intentions for the day, or 5 minutes each evening reflecting on your emotional experiences. This builds self-awareness and helps you identify patterns in your triggers and responses. A gratitude practice shifts your brain toward noticing positive aspects of your life rather than focusing exclusively on problems and challenges. Write down 3 things you're grateful for each day and be specific about why you appreciate them. This simple practice literally rewires your neural pathways toward optimism and resilience. Your physical environment profoundly affects your emotional state, though most people never consider this connection. Cluttered, chaotic spaces create internal agitation. Clean, organized, peaceful environments promote calm and clarity. Take control of your surroundings, your home, office, even your car, and design them to support the emotional state you want to cultivate. Pay attention to the inputs you allow into your mental and emotional space. The news you consume, the social media you scroll through, the conversations you engage in, and the entertainment you choose all influence your emotional state. If you're constantly consuming negative, fear-based, or drama-filled content, you'll find it much harder to maintain emotional equilibrium. Develop what I call an information diet. Just as you're careful about what you put in your body, be intentional about what you put in your mind. Choose news sources that inform without sensationalizing. Follow social media accounts that inspire rather than trigger. Engage in conversations that uplift rather than drain. Throughout your day, practice many moments of mindfulness. When you're walking from one place to another, instead of checking your phone, notice your surroundings. When you're waiting in line, practice deep breathing instead of getting impatient. When you're eating, actually taste your food instead of multitasking. These micro-practices of presence and awareness accumulate over time, building your capacity for emotional regulation during more challenging moments. Create transition rituals between different parts of your day. When you come home from work, instead of immediately diving into evening responsibilities, take 5 minutes to consciously shift from work mode to home mode. This might involve changing clothes, taking a few deep breaths, or simply setting an intention for how you want to show up for your family. Before important meetings, conversations, or events, take a moment to center yourself and set an intention for how you want to be present. Ask yourself, what kind of energy do I want to bring to this situation? How do I want to show up? End your day with reflection rather than distraction. Instead of falling asleep scrolling through your phone, spend a few minutes reviewing your day. What went well emotionally? Where did you react instead of respond? What can you learn from today's experiences? Remember, the goal isn't perfection, it's progress. You'll still have days when you're triggered, reactive, or emotionally off balance. That's normal and human. The difference is that you'll now have tools to recognize what's happening more quickly and return to center more easily. Emotional mastery is ultimately about freedom. Freedom from being controlled by your emotions, freedom to choose your responses, and freedom to create the life you want regardless of external circumstances. Every day, you have countless opportunities to practice this freedom through small choices and conscious responses. The calm life isn't a life without challenges. It's a life where challenges don't disturb your inner peace. It's a life where you remain connected to your values, your wisdom, and your strength no matter what storms you encounter. This is the life that awaits you on the other side of emotional mastery. Conclusion: you are the storm and the calm. We've reached the end of our journey together, but in many ways, this is just the beginning of yours. You now possess the knowledge, tools, and understanding to transform your emotional life completely. The question is, what will you do with what you've learned? Take a moment to reflect on where you were when we started. Maybe you were someone who got triggered easily, who lost their temper in meetings, who spiraled into anxiety over small setbacks, or who felt controlled by emotions rather than in control of them. That person still exists within you, but now they're accompanied by a wiser, more skilled version of yourself. You understand now that emotions aren't mysterious forces that happen to you randomly. They're predictable responses to the thoughts you think and the meanings you assign to events. You know that the space between stimulus and response is where your freedom lives, and you have specific tools to access that space whenever you need it. You've learned that your triggers aren't character flaws. They're information about your deepest needs and fears, and they point you toward areas where growth and healing are possible. You understand that reframing isn't about denial or false positivity. It's about choosing interpretations that empower you rather than victimize you. You know that emotional mastery isn't about feeling fewer emotions. It's about feeling them fully while choosing your responses wisely. You've discovered that resilience isn't about avoiding difficulty, but about bouncing back faster and growing stronger through every challenge. Here's what I want you to remember. Chaos will never disappear from your life. The world will continue to be loud, unpredictable, and full of triggers. People will still act in ways that could provoke your reactivity. Unexpected challenges will still arise. This is the nature of life, and it's not going to change. But what can change, what has already begun changing, is your relationship to that chaos. You no longer have to be a victim of circumstances, other people's behavior, or your own emotional patterns. You have the power to be the calm in any storm, the peace in any chaos, the steady presence that others can count on when everything else feels uncertain. This power has been within you all along. These tools and techniques didn't give you abilities you didn't possess. They simply revealed capacities that were already there, waiting to be developed and expressed. Your emotional mastery isn't just a gift to yourself. It's a gift to everyone whose life you touch. When you're emotionally regulated, you create space for others to feel safe, to be authentic, and to access their own wisdom. When you respond instead of react, you break cycles of conflict and drama that might have continued for generations. When you stay calm in chaos, you become a beacon of hope and strength for others who are struggling. For the next 7 days, I challenge you to choose one moment each day to practice the pause. It might be when someone cuts you off in traffic, when you receive criticism, when plans change unexpectedly, or when technology doesn't work the way you want it to. In that moment, instead of reacting automatically, pause and choose your response consciously. Notice what happens when you do this. Notice how it feels to respond from your highest self rather than your triggered ego. Notice how others respond differently when you bring calm presence instead of reactive energy. Notice how your confidence grows each time you prove to yourself that you have the power to choose. Remember, emotional mastery is not about perfection, it's about progress. You'll still have moments when you react before you remember to pause. You'll still experience strong emotions and sometimes be swept away by them. This doesn't mean you failed, it means you're human. The goal is not to eliminate these moments, but to recover from them more quickly and learn from them more deeply. Be patient with yourself as you integrate these skills into your daily life. Like learning any new skill, emotional mastery takes time, practice, and self-compassion. Celebrate small victories along the way, and be kind to yourself during the inevitable setbacks. You are embarking on one of the most important journeys of your life, the journey toward mastering yourself. There is no greater achievement, no more valuable skill, and no better investment of your time and energy than developing the ability to remain calm, centered, and wise regardless of what life brings your way. You are both the storm and the calm. You have the power to create chaos or peace, reactivity or wisdom, suffering or serenity. The choice is always yours, and it's always available in this moment, right now. Your emotionally masterful life is waiting for you. It's time to claim it.